Mhm.
You all. This presentation came about 2 years ago. I was scheduled to make a presentation to a local chamber luncheon, and I got there early. And the first person I met was a woman that had a small business there in the community, and we started talking. And I realized that what I had to say that day was not very relevant to where she was. And what she needed was a better way to find clients. And it just occurred to me, well, I should talk about how I have managed my networks and my quote marketing throughout my career. And at this point, it's now 30 years into that time when I started my consulting practice back in 1995. And, I started a consulting practice without having ever been a consultant or ever run a business. And so what happened was we had been living in West Virginia. I had been working at a at a college, and when we announced that we were moving to North Carolina, to Western North Carolina, three guys that I knew there said, "Oh, well, when you get there, look up my friend so and so, and so he'll kind of help you get established." I said, "Okay." So I called I called these three guys up. I said, "Hey, I'd like to come tell you a little bit about what I want to do and why I'm here." And then and so that's what happened. I went and I said, "I'm interested in supporting people and their families and their organizations to strengthen the community." And then I said this phrase, and you need to keep this phrase indelibly imprinted upon your brain because this is the money statement, the money question. I asked them, "So who do you think I need to know, and would you introduce me? Now that you know who I am and what I'm interested in doing, who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce me?" And these three guys gave me between 10 and 15 names and phone numbers. And I called all those people up, went through the same thing. This is who I am. This is what I'm interested in doing. Who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce me? And and that's all I've ever done over the last 30 years to find work. And that idea became embedded in my podcast, the Eddie Network podcast. So I asked people, who do you know that you think I should know? Because they would be a good person to have on my podcast. And, some people give me one or two names, and, one fellow gave me 10 names. And I invited all of those people on. And that this whole idea of networking through introductions is really significant. And it's significant because what we're banking on is a kind of like a triangle. There are two of us on this triangle that know each other, but that person up here, I'm here, that person up here also knows someone over on this side. Let's get this straight. There you go. This side also knows this person. So what they're doing is they're going to bridge this between my thumbs. This is a bridge between the two people who did know each other. And in network theory, that's called a structural hole. And in network theory, we're talking about bridging that hole. And so now the three of us have a relationship. And it's really based on the fact that these two people have a relationship where they see each other as credible. And when one says, "I'd like you to know so and so," they're thinking, "Okay, that I will get to know that person because my friend is credible to me." And obviously he's not going to introduce me to someone who will be harmful to me or not be worthwhile knowing. And so this whole idea of building relationships through the relationships we already have, by them introducing us to people that we don't know, has been a magical thing for me. So let me give you an idea of how this has affected my own life. So our family moved to the Western North Carolina, Asheville, Hendersonville area in 1995, and I started asking these questions. And I met a man at church named Dick Wallace, and Dick Wallace had been a corporate guy, and he had been the CEO of a national clothing retailer. And so I said, well, this is what I'm doing. And he kind of took me under his wing and he helped me to think through how to run my business and that sort of thing. And then he invited me to lunch. And at lunch was the president and publisher of the local paper, the Asheville Citizen-Times. And so Dick was introducing me to Virgil Smith. Now, Virgil Smith and I connected really well immediately, and Virgil invited me to join him on an educational task force. He was the chair, I was the vice chair, and we worked for about 3 years on that. And then in 1999, he had the paper invite me to be a community columnist on the paper. Did that for a year. Then in 2004, they invited me to become a paid leadership, a business leadership columnist. And I got to write twice a month. And so I started weblogging at that time, and that was 2004. And then I did the executive leadership writing for 5 years, and then that ended. And then that was at the end of the recession, and I went through a series of losses. Basically my my consulting practice died, and I was running a nonprofit, and I got fired from that, and my marriage ended. So I went through these 3 losses, and I ended up sitting in my apartment thinking, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so I picked up and moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming without a plan. But what I did was I picked up where I had left off, which was writing. And so I've been writing ever since, and I've written 8 books. And it all began because Dick Wallace introduced me to Virgil Smith. And out of that came the recognition that I had something I could do, which was write. So that idea is that we can make a difference by introducing people to the people that we know, because we want them to succeed. We want them to find people who will help them, or we're looking for some help, and we ask the question, who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce me? So I want to break this down into 3 things. The first question, the first piece of this is the ask. Who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce me? We're embedding your why in that question, but that question is really about what you do and how you do it. So you're going to say, I do this, and this is how I do it, and this is what I hope to see come from that. And all of that is a more sophisticated description of why am I doing what I do. And you're telling that as, I'd like you to accept this as something that I'm doing as something that's valuable, and I'd like you to share that with someone that you think I should know, because they will see that too, and maybe find a way to do this together. So we're building relationships to meet our goals. And so in many cases, what we're doing is we're beginning relationships, and we're going to have our first conversation with someone. So the first question is, what is my pitch? My pitch is, this is what I do, and you need to do it. I think you need to do it in 1 sentence, no more. If you can't do it in 1 sentence, then it needs to become clearer. And by that, what I mean is, all I would say is, I want to support people and their families and their organizations to strengthen the community. And that's all I needed to say. And whatever they thought that meant was fine with me, because I could adapt to whatever they thought, and I could adapt to whoever they're introducing me to, and I could say, I can help you do that. And so we're learning how to, I think in this process, we're learning how to adapt ourselves to whomever we're talking to. And we're learning to say, I have something to offer, but I would like to be in relationship with you first. So the second part of this is the first question. The first part is to ask. The second part is, what is your why? And your why is, this is what I want to do. I want to support my community by helping people in their organizations, their families get better. Later on, that went deeper. And so because I was a leadership guy, I had this statement about leadership, which is all leadership begins with personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters. So that describes what I want to see with people and their families and their organizations. I'd like to see all those people in those different social settings begin to take personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters, because that's what happens when a community gets stronger. So we're talking about why, we're talking about what, we're talking about how. How do I do this? Well, I talk with people, I do problem solving, I run retreats, I coach, I consult, I help organizations get out of trouble, I help them think clearly. All those things which we see as all the activities of what we do, whatever that is, those are just the how we do it, but embedded in that is why we do that. And the trick is, how do we express that so that they see that and they say, oh, so this is who you are and this is what you're doing. I know someone who could use you. And so then they introduce you. And that's what I've been doing for 30 years. And virtually all my business, all my clients, all the work that I've ever done has come because I just keep asking people to introduce me to other people. And out of that came this idea of starting a podcast. So I'm 2.5 years into that. I post twice a week. I've This morning I posted a day early, but I posted I think it's the 271st, I think it is, or 61st episode. I've had I think 100 and close to 200 people who have been interviewed, and I think 155 of them was the first time we've ever had a conversation. So I'm putting into the show notes, into the chat, my playlist, my podcast playlist of the first conversations that I've had with people. So they're showing up. I mean, there are people who have shown up on the screen, and all I know about them is their name. And I have somehow been disconnected from whoever it was that introduced them to me. I don't know what they do with their work. I don't know where they live. And so we're starting at the most bare bones level of conversation. And within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we're into something that's deep and meaningful and worthwhile to listen to. And it's because everyone has something to share. Everyone has a story. Everyone has some lesson that they've learned in life that is worth hearing. And so these first conversations are not about me giving my pitch to them. Oh, this is who I am and this is what I'm interested in doing. No, the first conversation is really about, oh, who are you? And what is it that you're interested in? How did you get there? It's like that question I asked of Megan earlier. How did this happen, earlier in life that you came to see this? Those are the kinds of questions which say, I'm interested in you. I'm curious in you. And if you are able to convey that kind of curiosity as genuine and real, then they'll see you as having credibility and they want to know you. And then they may begin to ask questions in return. I've had people on the podcast who have said, I'd like to ask you the questions today. And I say, okay, here we go. This is a conversation. It's an unscripted conversation, so we can have a conversation where you ask the questions. Well, as it turns out, I end up typically asking those questions. But the point I'm making is that we have a clear idea of who we are and what we want to achieve. We have a simple way of describing it, and then we're meeting people who have been introduced to us or people that we already know, and we're asking the question, who are you? And do you know people that I should know? And would you introduce me? And then we moving into oftentimes into a first conversation with them if we don't know them. And we're asking them about who they are, because I think in the back of our minds, we should be asking, so who is this person and who am I? Who do I know that I think they should know because I'm going to introduce them to someone else? This is a networking function I think is different than has been thought of as networking, which is has been much more transactional. This is a much more relationship building thing where the relationships really matter. And all these people that I've had on my podcast, I guarantee you I can reach out to them today and say, hey, can you give me an answer to this? I have a question about the world that you're in. Can you help me with this? And because of the rapport that we established by the introduction and then by the conversation we have as a first conversation, all of a sudden we are people that know one another. We might not even think of it as superficial. We may even know each other at a much more deep and personal human level. And therefore, we want to continue that relationship. So if you take anything away from this, just think the question that you are always asking people that you meet, who do you know that you think I should know and would you introduce us? Now, let me say one more thing about that. The best way to do that, particularly if we're online, is to say, just send us a joint email and I'll take it from there. Just say, hey, Jane, I want you to meet Ed, and Ed, I want you to meet Jane, and I think you two ought to get together and have a conversation, and I think you have something to contribute to each other's work. And that's all that needs to be said. That really is all that needs to be said. And then you follow up and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's do a Zoom call, and we can kind of see where there's some commonalities here. And I guarantee you there are always commonalities, always commonalities. So if you feel like you're in a situation where you don't have enough references or people that you're needing to find work, this is the way to do it. And the first thing to do would be to establish a list of people, say 10 people that you begin to ask, who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce us?